Hello, everyone. My name is David Isaacson, Vice President for Product Marketing at ETQ, and I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar on the AMD Journey to High Performance. We're going to listen to a very special guest, Mario Andrade from AMD, and he will take us through their journey. But before we do that, I just want to tell you a little bit about today's webinar. First of all, we're going to be recording today's session. So you will have the opportunity to get a copy of the recording and listen to it. We are going to be taking questions and hopefully being able to answer some of those questions as we go through the webinar today. Please use the GoToWebinar panel on the right-hand side of the screen and ask your question there. If you need any help, there's also a chat button there, and if you're having trouble with audio or something like that, please just let us know in the chat. So today we'll go through, I'll do a brief introduction on ETQ as the sponsor of today's webinar, and then Mario will go into more detail on AMD and their quality journey. We'll get into a little bit of discussion and then finally open it up for questions and answers. So just take a couple of minutes to introduce who ETQ is. We are now part of Hexagon, and we're dedicated to creating competitive advantage through quality. That's what we really focus on, is being able to make sure that the products and services that we as organizations deliver to our customers are of the highest quality, and that it helps us be more effective in the marketplace. To do that, we have a quality management system, ETQ Reliance, which is incredibly flexible and scalable, all cloud native, uses very standard components to deliver high quality services and software for day-to-day usage. And Mario will talk more about that in a couple of minutes. We are a 30-year-old organization that has very deep cross-industry experience. We not only deal with life sciences, but also with manufacturing and electronics and food and beverage and a whole lot of different organizations. And what that really allows us to do is bring that cross-industry fertilization to our customers so you can learn from each other in terms of what best practices are in quality. And we want to make sure that all of our customers have an amazing customer experience, and we have the support and resources to be able to do that. As I mentioned, ETQ is part of Hexagon. We were acquired just about 2 weeks ago. Hexagon is a leader in sensor and hardware and software and autonomous solutions, which allow quality control on components being built on a manufacturing line, for example, which can then take that information and now integrate that into the quality management system to go further with that. So for example, if there's an issue that gets identified on a quality and during quality control, during testing, during measurement, we can take that information, develop a non-conformance, work with suppliers, stop any sort of assembly lines until we get the resolution to that issue, and be more effective and more timely in handling quality issues as they arise. As I mentioned, we deal with a lot of different industries and are able to bring best practices across all of these different verticals. You can just see a few of them on the screen here. As I mentioned, manufacturing, medical devices, electronics, consumer goods, food and beverages, and so forth. A lot of key companies are part of the ETQ ecosystem, bringing all those best practices to bear on their quality problems. Now, before we get to Mario, I just want to talk a little bit about the product that he's going to be discussing and the solution that he's using and that AMD is using. ETQ Reliance is a very broad set of capabilities, over 40 applications on a single platform in the cloud, delivering services to our customers. Whether you're dealing with something basic like document control or more complex when dealing with supply chain or new product introduction, the solution is available in the cloud and has advanced analytics available to allow you to understand what's going on within your environment. And that advanced analytics, called ETQ Insights, allows you to understand what's taking place in the organization, look at a number of dashboards that are included with the product out of the box, also integrate if you've got your own BI strategy and you want to plug in your own BI tools, and extract data out of insights and use it more globally within an organization, that's all available to you. And with that, what I'm going to do is turn it over to Mario to take us through the AMD Quality Journey.
Thanks, David. As David mentioned, my name is Mario Andrade. I work with AMD. We've implemented Reliance, I think in 2019 is when we started. I'll get into that in a little bit, but it's a pleasure to talk with you guys today. Moving to the next slide here. Again, this is just going over our journey. Just a little bit about AMD. We are in the business of building great products that accelerate the next generation of computing experiences through high performance and adaptive computing. You may be familiar with some of our products. We have in the high performance computing area, we have our AMD Ryzen and AMD EPYC. Those are usually in the laptop and desktop space. We also have EPYC in our data center, so you'll see those in servers as well. Under high performance graphics, we have our Radeon and Instinct products. Those can span from your personal desktops or laptops up to data center as well. And recently, through our acquisition of Xilinx, we also have Sync, Versal, and Kintex. Again, you may be familiar with some of those. A little bit about myself. I was hired at AMD in January of 2000, so I've been with AMD for 23 years. My background is hardware and software engineering. My main focus being, so just in case that it cut out, I joined AMD in 2000 as a hardware and software engineer. My main focus being on process improvements through automation. I started in the platform silicon validation group, automating several areas there, and then currently I'm in the quality organization as the QMS solution architect. We can move to the next slide.
Okay.
So this slide, I really just wanted to speak to our commitment to quality at AMD. You can see there in the green quote, that is directly from our CEO, Lisa Su. And I'll just read this briefly. At AMD, we challenge ourselves every day to deliver great levels of value to our customers by embedding quality in everything that we do. That's really key because we've, from top down, we've decided that quality should be present in everything within AMD. That's from our engagements with our customers to how we manage our suppliers, making sure and emphasizing that that everyone at AMD has a quality mindset, and we use our QMS solutions to do just that. Moving to the next slide.
Okay.
This really speaks at a high level to our quality journey with ETQ. In 2018, we evaluated roughly 10 different solutions. We then narrowed that down to 5. Followed by 3, and eventually chose ETQ as our QMS solution vendor. And really, we look at that as a partnership. It's a journey that we're on together. And so we really wanted to pair ourselves with somebody who's just as committed as we are to our journey. In 2019, we focused on implementing 10 modules across the year. That was a pretty big initial implementation. Then in 2020, we focused on our supplier portal. So looking at 5 of our key applications within Reliance, as well as 1 new developed application. We also implemented ETQ Insights within our organization to help us with our reporting and analytics. And then last year in 2021, we implemented 2 new applications as well as improved our access to analytics. This year, we're focused on 3 applications and 1 new application with a stretch goal being upgrading to NXG. Next slide, I'll talk to a little bit more detail of that implementation process. Okay. So here you can see the breakout within 2019. We have broken our applications up into different swim lanes, focusing on either ISO compliance, supplier portal, product materials, analytics, and platform related. So in 2019, within ISO, our key focus there was audits management, corrective actions, doc control, employee training, assets and calibration, as well as change management. A term we use, PLM, which is really the project control application, and then 2 customized applications, Gauge R&R and Product SVC, as well as platform related, being the standard Admin Center, Reliance Engine, delegation, and AMD add-ons is our additional information that we consider at a platform level. In 2020, again, we highlighted 5 key areas to bring into supplier portal, things like audits management, corrective action, doc control, change management, as well as our quality management. That's a custom module that we had implemented that allows us to do things like QIP, scorecards, KPIs, everything related to our suppliers that we track on a yearly basis. We enhanced our supplier management application to allow us to better manage the contacts within each supplier, as well as providing access to key applications where they would only have access to those and exclude the others. Within Insights, we created, I want to say it was about 6 or 7 customized dashboards for that, as well as the centralized quality data lake. In 2021, we focused on new modules, lessons learned application, as well as the data yield analysis, and again, enabled that one for our supplier portal, and then enhanced our BI integration. So in addition to the dashboards that we have within Insights, we also wanted our users to be able to generate customized dashboards through Power BI and other intelligence tools. This year, we're focused on switching from employee training, migrating into training management, looking at release management, user management, where we'll have a more holistic control and management over onboarding and offboarding users, risk management, and our material review board, or MRB. Next slide. So through the implementation, I wanted to highlight some things that we took away as best practices or lessons learned. The key things that we keep in mind through our implementation process is ETQ, at the end of the day, is our partner. As I mentioned before, we're on a journey together, not only for our implementation, but with the product in general. And so we wanted to make sure that partnership was well known throughout the entire process. For each application that we implement, we always have an executive sponsor for that, an executive at a higher level who is helping to push from the top down and support the implementation, as well as review the business processes that we are designing or implementing within the tool. I'll always say it's never too early to start gathering requirements. Those are things that we always do internally. Whether we're implementing for that year or an upcoming year, we always want to start gathering those requirements. The requirements really drive the scope of work, right? And so ultimately, the better you have documented your requirements, the better the scope of work will be for all implementation. Also, UAT is extremely critical for us. So we always plan to give ourselves plenty of time for UAT. We want to find as many bugs as we can during that phase before we go live, so that we can address any issues. Plan for the roadblocks. as much as a success, right? Everybody always thinks the end goal is that success factor, but really you've got to include the potential for roadblocks and how to manage those. In UAT, detailed use cases are always a requirement for us. We want to make sure that we're planning for both the successful events that we intend to happen, as well as trying to predict potential issues. So we do have use cases that are focused on catching errors within the tool. And then, remembering that this is a team effort. This is something that that we're doing together, both AMD and ETQ, and so it's not just one person driving it, but it is the collection of the team. No project is ever beyond best practices or lessons learned. Even if you were to hit a home run and everything goes entirely as planned, there's always an area for capturing best practices and lessons learned. And then lastly, it's always to celebrate the success, right? We always want, at the end of an implementation, we always want to be able to tell our teams that participated the good job that they did and the hard work they put into it. Next slide. So how did we decide our implementation plan? The main areas that we focused on to drive that decision making was our ISO governance, emerging markets, and then our long-term strategy. So in that, you can see in this slide the prioritization that we had across the applications and how we attacked the planning of that, focusing really on the ISO, those core applications that David mentioned earlier, focusing on those, and then looking at our products, our product and material related applications and how to implement them. Next slide. So within Reliance, our key to automation here revolves around integration into other systems. And the automation that we do, that we focus on, is really to help reduce the person hours needed for data entry or actions within the system, to reduce the potential for human error by being able to copy from one system to another the data within, to increase productivity, to improve our first time right, and then to always improve our overall cost of quality. The main areas that we've focused on for automation would be our AMD engineering warehouse. So looking at other systems, data warehouses within AMD, connecting those to Reliance to share things like employee data, organizational data, and program related data. From a manufacturing analytics, our main focus here is being able to transfer data from Reliance to our analytics systems and back into Reliance as needed for being able to compute key analytics across the organization. And then the last area is focused around product lifecycle management. So looking at our PLM suite and things like bill of material, or our customer change notifications, or our technical change notifications. Next slide. Switching gears into insights, I wanted to just focus on what we're doing with insights and how we chose to do our implementation. So with insights, we're really focused on the advanced analytics. We want to make sure that the dashboards that we're using are focused around compliance. We consider those to be our fixed dashboards, meaning that the style or visualizations of the data does not change over time, but that the data itself can as we go either week to week, quarter to quarter, or year to year. We wanted to have these dashboards in place so that our executives can go into insights, review the data, and make critical decisions based on the data that they're seeing. We also wanted to have our quality data lake and have access to that not just from within Reliance, but to be able to plug other things, other tools in our toolkit to the quality data lake. And then obviously to have Power BI integration for those ad hoc or more dynamic changing dashboards that the tactical teams would use. Next slide. So how do we really use insights? This is just a representation of if you think about a giant ship, at the lower level, we have more of that tactical piece where the main users within Reliance are doing the data entry, equivalent to rowing the ship, right? And so each one has a hand on an oar, making sure that the data they're putting in is as correct as possible. One level up, you have management who is reviewing for immediate decisions. Within that ship, they may be saying row faster, row harder, row slower, change direction. And then at the top, you have your executives who are really looking forward towards the horizon, steering the ship on a much larger level, telling those of us within the tool, the critical things that we need to be driving towards. And then lastly, Insights helps with the historical data. So being able to show over time our journey, not only from transparency's sake, but from an audit perspective to show how we've gotten from point A to point B and beyond. Insights really helps to track that. Next slide. And then our lessons learned from our implementation of ETQ Insights. So really what we found is we wanted Insights to be our fixed dashboards. Again, those that don't change over time, but that executives know are there for them to review and make critical decisions. And then using Power BI to leverage those more dynamic dashboards that will change maybe month to month or week to week, depending on the tactical pieces and how that's being used. We wanted to make sure that we had locked down all of our requirements for those fixed dashboards so that there was no vagueness or ambiguity in what we were trying to do with those visualizations. We needed to have executive sponsorship for Insights because each of those fixed dashboards our executives would be able to use, and so we needed them to review them and make sure that the mock-ups were correct before we actually went in and developed them. And then also pass through to Reliance. We needed to have that quality data lake that we could share with other systems and then be able to take data from Reliance into that QDL and then from the QDL into other systems within AMD. And then last slide here is really how did we integrate with Insights? So our long-term plan is just as I mentioned with Reliance, our integration plan with Insights is to connect it with our analytics within manufacturing, our engineering data warehouse within all of AMD, and then our ERP system, our enterprise resource planning. I think that's it.
Yeah, I think that's it. Thank you, Mario. That was very interesting. So we're going to open it up for questions in a moment, but I'd also like to just have a couple questions of my own. As you've rolled out the system in AMD, how have you driven adoption? How has adoption been? What's the reception been from the teams?
Yeah, great question. There's two parts to this. The first is that we had top-down mandates for our teams within global operations to leverage our QMS tool for all of our ISO activities. So that was the first piece, right? Is kind of being told, hey, you've got to use this tool. The second piece is we encouraged adoption through getting people to use one of the particular applications, seeing how well of a response that had, and then using that, leveraging that to to continue the adoption rate. So in our case, we used the dot control module as the most adopted one in the very beginning. There was a bit of a hill to climb there for learning our business process, understanding why we were implementing it the way we did. But once people started to use it, they realized how effective it was. And then it was easier to get them to use other ones like corrective actions or employee training.
Right. Okay. And then as you started the rollout, one of the benefits of ETQ is how flexible it is, right? So did you look to configure it out of the box, or did you start with what was standard? How did you proceed with that?
Our first few implementations in 2019 were not too far from out of the box functionality. When you look at our audits management and our dot control and employee training, those are not too far out from the out of the box. But our corrective actions and our project control were heavily configured. And a lot of this isn't, it's not just nice to haves. We understood the business process, and we needed to have that business process in the tool. So in those two cases with corrective action and with our project control, we absolutely knew that those were going to be more complex, but we did not want to maybe dumb that down to make it easier. We wanted to make sure that the business process dictated the implementation. And
right.
Of course, with the flexibility of Reliance, that's what really helped us.
Yeah, so it's fair to say that you were able to adapt the product to your current processes.
Yes.
Okay. And then a lot of organizations, especially global organizations like AMD, have processes that may be different in different locations, or they may try to give more local control in some cases. How has AMD approached this? Basically what we think of as harmonization globally in terms of how you look at your different processes.
Sure. For us at AMD, we have one process for each of those applications or business processes. We have one process for all regions, for all locations. We did not do anything that had, that said in one region we were going to have one process versus another region where you'd have a different one. We wanted to make sure that everyone was using the tool the same way, and that effectively we were having the same business process and data input in the tool, regardless of the region.
Okay. And then the last question I have really here is for us to talk about before we get into the Q&A. We are getting a bunch of questions in, and thank everybody for that. But how do you decide what's next? Do you have a core team? Do you have is that you deciding what's next? Is it management? How does that happen?
Yeah, great question. We do have a core team. We've had a core team from the very beginning, evaluating different QMS tools. It's been the same core team throughout the years. It's roughly 25 to 30 people representing their different organizations. So each organization has a voice and input into the business processes that we're defining, the implementation roadmap that we have. All of that is accounted for and then presented to our executives for review and approval.
Okay, excellent. All right, so now I want to get into the Q&A. And what we'll do is, while we're getting questions from the audience, just put up a few resources that the attendees can certainly look at as they go. So we've had a bunch of questions come in. The lessons learned, you talked about lessons learned. Is that an app? Was that an app you're talking about building?
So there were a couple of different ones. We have a process of doing lessons learned after each implementation. So the slides that I had specific to where the titles said lessons learned, that was the process of performing lessons learned throughout our implementations. This last year, we actually implemented an application called Lessons Learned to help track all of those, not only for the implementations within Reliance, but for our business itself. So, multiple times throughout our product lifecycle, we perform lessons learned. at the end of each project that we do lessons learned, and we wanted to have a library of those available to our Reliance users so that they can look at them and, most importantly, apply them to future activities within AMD.
Okay, great. And then digging into lessons learned, we had another question that had come in earlier. Any lessons regarding documentation and knowledge sharing management?
If I'm understanding that correctly, I'll answer it this way. Within our ISO governance, for any ISO-related business process we implement, we have documentation around that process, not only that details the process itself, but helps provide a level of training to new users of that process. So we always have a structured documentation for those things that we are implementing related to ISO. Outside of that, we do also have training material that we use in a form of documentation to help onboard new users.
Okay.
I hope I was answering that correctly.
That was what the question was, so I'm assuming however you interpret it is correct. Next question here was, what does an EQMS look like when implemented, and how and where does it interface with a PLM system?
So for us, we have key points within our product lifecycle management where we are gathering our PLM related data. And again, for us, that is things like our bill of material, where those things are needed at the very beginning of a project. But we also leverage the interaction between that for notifying our customers or notifying our suppliers of technical changes to products, whether they are going to be launched or post-launch. And so we have those connections into those systems that allow us to share data between them and make that communication more easy.
Okay. Next question that has come in, and again, thank everybody for all the questions that we received. Have ETQ products and or solutions been rolled out and implemented in engineering procurement or engineering procurement installation as compared to manufacturing and other sectors? I'm not sure what that means. How did you roll it out? I mean, you implemented it in an engineering environment, correct?
We did, and one of our main focuses there was more on the manufacturing side, managing our suppliers and the manufacturing process, and not as much in the procurement side. That is something that we are looking at for roadmap implementation further down the road, but not at this moment.
Okay. Next question. We did that one. How do you stay on top of scheduling and managing supplies? What software do you use to control that part of it?
For our supplies, again, things like bill of material and other things, those are managed through Oracle Agile, but we have that connection between Oracle Agile and Reliance so that the data is shared between the tools as needed.
Okay. How many people do you have on your design team?
Besides me, one.
Okay.
It's a pretty small team. And this is for the design and implementation related to Reliance. Our product design team is infinitely bigger, but related to QMS, there's just two of us. Currently, we leverage on the business side. We have 7 others on the IT support team who help us. They're a fantastic team that we partner with and work with. And then we also leverage, obviously, the ETQ implementation consultants as well for those larger scale projects.
Okay. And then a follow-up question from the same person. How confident are you with the cloud-based product and maintaining security of confidential company information? I think that's a great question.
Yeah, that's a really great question. My confidence. So I'll say this: when we selected ETQ as our vendor back in 2018, we were originally planning to do an on-premise installation, but we realized the 2019 SaaS version or cloud version would be available January or early 2019, and we decided to leverage that instead. We wanted to be cloud-based from the very beginning, and so I think, David, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we were the first to implement the cloud solution for ETQ. But we've enjoyed it since. It's been just as as well as we expected, and we're looking forward to migrating into NXG.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, it's and just to let everybody know, I mean, it is very secure. We take security extremely seriously.
Yep.
As you've probably seen, there have been a number of exploits on the web over the last few months. I'll give everybody a couple of examples. There was this thing called Log4j, which was in a product that basically was in use just by every vendor in the market out there, pretty much every software product you could find. And within a couple of days of that being public, we were on top of it and had it patched, so we made sure that customers were not impacted by that exploit. And then a couple of weeks ago, there was another one, and we took care of that fairly quickly as well. What was called Spring for Shell, and that was impacted a subset of our customers, which we dealt with. So we are always scanning. We're always on top of what's going on from a security perspective, and so that's part of what you get when you go with a cloud SaaS-based system like
Yep.
ETQ Reliance.
Yeah, and just to add to that as well, within our installation of Reliance, again, as I mentioned, we have an application within Reliance that helps us manage our suppliers' access, so external users' access into our system.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're able to, on a user level, for our external users, be able to dictate which applications they have access to. All others, they will not even see. So they would not be able to get to that data.
Okay. And then a final question that I have here is, what business users are allowed to configure processes? So we're talking about security here. Who's allowed to get in there and make changes to the system, and how do you govern that?
Yeah, it's actually very locked down for us. The people I mentioned earlier, myself and Rajath are on the business side, and then we have about 5 to 7 other people on the IT support team who have the ability to do any designer level changes to processes.
Okay, let's see. And I think that's it for the questions that we received. I think this has been great, Mario. I really appreciate your taking time to speak with us today and to pass along some of the knowledge and wisdom that you've gained over the last 23 years working with AMD and what you've learned in the quality space. So really appreciate your time today, and appreciate everybody on the webinar who attended and submitted questions and listened to this session.
My pleasure, David.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Bye-bye.